What is going on, Shelby?
What
Man,
up,
welcome to
Jeff?
another Mondays, back to the normal schedule.
Yeah, a little bit, I guess. A little bit. How you doing, my comic book brother?
Oh, doing good, man. Been a busy weekend, a lot of stuff going on. Obviously you went to a lot of cons and everything. I just been working like crazy right now and just trying to get everything organized. It's been, as you can see, there's piles of books all around me right now.
I'm organizing as we're talking, man. Because
Multitasking, I love it, man.
I started doing the same thing. Yeah, if you notice, behind me, like the garbage pile is,
Holy
you
cow!
know, got a little bit out of hands here, and once it gets to where I can't walk, and I just ordered me a new desk, so I know no one can see it, but this desk I'm sitting at has been a great desk. I bought it in 2002.
2002. Well, I
I
appreciate
swear
you
to
having
you.
shorts on when you did that camera swipe, so thank you.
Huh? I do
Captain
have shorts
Beardo,
on.
Matthew,
I
what's
do have
going on,
shorts
brother?
on tonight.
What's
Yes,
that?
I do have shorts on
You got
tonight.
shorts on
So
tonight? Is
it's
Shelby drunk
Monday,
tonight?
so I'll wear shorts tonight. It's Saturdays that I go bottomless.
It's any day that ends in Y.
That's it.
Oh, man. So I just rushed right into this. I didn't even do our normal
I know.
banner and everything.
I was chillaxing for a minute, expecting to see the 30-second countdown, and
Yeah, I just
um,
jumped right into it. It's
just
because I
jumped
did the
in, man.
I'm
It's
sorry.
all
All right.
right.
All right, it's okay. Hold on there,
Yeah.
Buck. We'll do the intro. Oh,
Oh
that's so much better.
God, cleaning up this desk. I still have freaking Scooby snacks from you
I am the
sitting
snack
here.
man.
Oh my God, I'll never eat these. I should, but then I don't have anybody to give them away to, so I guess I can just throw them away.
Yeah,
Unless
the
I
older
send
ones,
them
they may
back
be
to
rock
you.
hard now.
I could. They are rock hard. I was just sitting here squeezing them. I could send them back to you, or I could throw them in Matthew's box.
Throw
Send
me
them to
Matthews.
him.
Have them break a tooth.
But
All right. So we're doing the new formats that we do now. So it's shorter time frame. We're condensing it down, trying to do it within about a half an hour. After this, I've got my whatnot sale. I'm hoping to get on tonight. I had it at 8:30. I had to push it back a little bit, so it's at like 9:15. So once we're done here, go check me over at whatnot there, and we're gonna get into it tonight. And tonight we're talking about Image Comics, man. A lot of
wow,
it ties into what you talked about last week, with creators' rights, what went on with Siegel and Schuster, what went on with Jack Kirby. Um, just don't open them. They're still sealed. You got it, Matthew. Yeah, so it all ties into that, and basically how they kind of changed the industry from what it was before. And obviously, there's still a lot of things and contracts going on now, but they did a huge 180, if you want to call it, in the whole industry. So let me get this pulled up here, if I
yeah.
can.
This is a topic you and I talked about. I mean, this was probably one of the first topics um we discussed before we even started the channel.
Yep.
And I have a little bit different perspective having owned a store during this time. Um, but yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot of things. I think Image got blamed for a lot of things. I mean, obviously, I think they did a lot of things wrong in the beginning, but they got blamed for a lot of stuff too. And when you really look at it, they really were just kids, starting a company who had no idea how to start a company. So there's definitely a lot of things that go on with that, and kind of with that notion, you know, there were the seven founders. So okay, so the way it was, obviously, it was Jim Lee, Tom McFarlane, the Todd Father, Rob Liefeld, Eric Larson, Jim Valentino, Will Portaccio, and Mark Silvesti. Those are the main ones. And those guys represented a huge chunk of the comic book business back then. Depending on which, there's a couple of conflicting sources, but somewhere around 40 of the top 50 selling comic books in early 90s, right, especially 91, was all done by one of these guys. So they kind of like dominated everything. And Wild Comics is back. What is up, brother?
What's up, Wild Comics? Wild, I still have a box for you that you never paid shipping on, and it was some it was just some what do we call them, pull lots or something. I don't think there's anything great in there. Let me know what you want to do, man. Maybe I'll just send you a refund, or maybe send you a shirt or something, buddy. So
there you go.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with that statement there, Jeff. And you also just had them coming off of some of the largest print runs ever, right? You had Rob Liefeld with X-Force. You had Todd McFarlane. I mean, and that's unheard of, right? It's like, you are so popular,
yep,
Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane, we're going to give you your own book. And not only your own book, our top two characters, if X-Men being a character, right, is that Jim Lee, we're going to put you in control of your own book with all of our best X-Men. Todd, we're going to give you your own book with our flagship character, Spider-Man. So there was a lot of, I don't want to say trust, but there was a lot of money to be made. I mean, whatever goes along with that, right? There's a lot of explosiveness. There's a lot of, everything that was surrounding these guys.
Right. And that was Marvel's way of taking care of them. They're helping taking care of the talent. They had Todd McFarlane, who was making a lot of noise, over at Marvel, and he pretty much kind of demanded he wanted something more. So they said, okay, we'll give you your own book. You've never written anything before, but we'll let you write it too. So this is your book.
Yeah.
So what's that?
No, I agree. Yeah. And
so
it definitely showed that he had never written before.
They said, okay, you've got this one. And like I said, Rob Liefeld doing X-Force, which outsold Spider-Man. Jim Lee comes on, outsells all of them, and does 8 million copies of X-Men #1. So you had basically, when you add up all 7 creators there, all the X-Men titles, those 4, the 2 Spider-Man titles, and then Jim Valentino, which was doing Guardians of the Galaxy, which at the time was the largest non-X-Men or Spider-Man book that was out there. So these were all the top guys that were doing this. And the way it kind of started, it actually wasn't going to be 7 people in the beginning. It was only going to be 4.
Yes.
It was only going to be Jim Lee, Tom McFarlane,
Todd, Rob, Eric, and I think Jim.
Jim, yep.
I think so.
Yeah, so it just so happened to be a chance encounter. Noah, what's going on? Appreciate you stopping by, Noah, man. So it was basically a chance encounter. Everyone happened to be in New York at the same time. I guess they were going to be at the Sotheby's auction. And then everyone was kind of there. So they ran into Mark Silvestri. And he was getting tired already of doing a lot of stuff. He wanted a challenge. He wanted some change. So he's like, yeah, sure, I'm on board. One day. Yeah, I'm on board. Sure. And then they ran into Jim Lee, who Jim Lee was, as they kind of described him, as kind of like the golden boy. He didn't rock the boat. He wasn't the Rob Liefeld or Todd McFarlane. He's the company man. Straight arrow. He had no aspirations of leaving. Noah, thank you so much, man. I assume you're talking about me on that one, or you're talking about Wild. But I appreciate you guys coming by here. Appreciate all the support you guys have done on Whatnot as well. But yeah, they had this chance encounter in New York where they basically recruited everyone within a couple days. Actually, it was one day. It was one night.
One day, yeah.
Yeah, one night. And I don't know. It really was Tom McFarlane kind of leading the charge. Thank you, Noah, man. Leading this charge. And I'm not entirely sure why he had such animosity against Marvel. I know he felt very strongly once he sold whatever the 2 million books for Spider-Man 1, they didn't give him anything extra, and he felt he deserved more. He felt like he deserved more recognition, a bonus, something to say, hey, we appreciate you, you're the man, kind of thing. So he kind of wanted to give the big finger to Marvel and saying, we're taking the top 4 people, we're leaving. And then when he saw everyone else, he's like, okay, now we're getting the top 7 people and we're going to leave. And what happened, I guess, was after they told Marvel, or really, I guess Todd was the one really talking, because everyone else, I guess, were kind of under the assumption that this was a negotiation almost.
Yeah, I think so. From what stories I watched on YouTube, I mean, there's plenty of videos out there, with interviews. I think Robert Kirkman is part of one of his things. That little comic book season he had.
Yep.
But I think it all originated somehow with Rob Liefeld, with the idea, and
yep.
Maybe being young, and we all think we can take on the world a little more when we're younger, and then Todd McFarlane, really kind of carried the
right. Well, especially when you've got the backing of, hey, I just sold 2 million comic books and 5 million comic books and 8 million comic books. You have a little bit more. Maybe a little more swagger than maybe saying, hey, I can really do a lot more. But yeah, it did seem to be, it was Rob Liefeld's initial kind of idea of saying, hey, he actually talked to the president, I forgot his name, of Malibu Comics first, and said, hey, I'm interested in doing kind of my own book and something different. Would you be interested in publishing it? And, Malibu was like, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
And then I guess a couple other people said, sure, they want to do it too. And I don't know why it never went through on that side, but Todd McFarlane got involved and like, okay, we're doing our own thing. We're running over to Marvel and we're going to tell them F you and we're going to start our own company.
That relationship with Malibu had actually been together since the mid 80s. I used to have the comics sitting right here at my feet, but I finally put them away. But I had he's about 24, I think, something like that. When he did his first work for Malibu, he had done a backup story. It was his first full story, and in that book happened to be an ad for Youngblood, saying that it was coming soon to Malibu Comics. And as a completely, some of the teams were still some of the members were still the same. Shaft was in there, Bad Rock was not in there, things like that. But so that is something that the relationship between Rob and Malibu had been in place for, probably 8 years or so, about that time. I know it was around 1985, 86 that, Rob did his first work for them. And so there had always been talk of him, doing Youngblood with them. And then it kind of morphed into this thing of, well, we're going to be our own company, and then you, Malibu, handle our distribution and our publication. I guess I'm saying that right. I know I'm saying distribution right.
Distribution.
But we're going to be our own, company. So, hey, man, I'm from the South, too. There's freaking little gnats and flies all over the place.
We got the back door open. The dogs are going out, and apparently we're letting a whole mess of mosquitoes in here. So, yeah, I'm swatting. I'm one of the weird guys. You can't see anything. You're screaming. But I'm like, ah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I'm kind of getting that 22, 23 age frame, because he was a teenager when he did that stuff at Malibu, but I'm wanting to say he's like 16, 17. So 7, 8 years later would put him in that 22.
Yeah, I think he was around 22 or something like that when this all was going down. And the thing that really shows, I don't know if it's the ego or what Todd was really wanting to do here. But as the story goes, after they told Marvel, hey, this is not a negotiation. We're just telling you we're leaving. We're taking your top talent. We're getting out of here. They then My Tourette's kicking in. I could be like Duffy and randomly start shouting out Star Wars references. So yeah, so apparently he then decided, you know what? Let's go walk over to DC down the street and let's tell them we're not going to work for them too, even though most of them weren't working for them, and like Jim Lee had never even stepped foot in DC Comics.
Right, right.
So they go into DC Comics and say, "Hey, listen, guys, we came here and we want to talk to you." And DC is like, "Oh, great, we got Jim Lee over here, Tom McFarlane's coming over, Rob Liefeld, great. We're gonna have this huge, awesome staple of creators here." And they pretty much said, "We're not going to work for you." And they're like, "Why in the world did you come over and tell us you're not going to work for us and you don't even work for us?" Well, that's the thing that really kind of lets you know the ego that they had, their kind of stake in the ground. But when you really look at it, yes, they were taking a risk by leaving Marvel and doing their own thing. But really, what is the risk? The risk is, hey, if it fails in a year and they go back to Marvel or DC, Marvel is not going to say, "Okay, Todd, Jim, Rob, you can't work for us. Too bad." Of
No,
course,
no, there'd be too much fear between both companies, DC and Marvel, right? If one of them
right,
said, "Well, no, you screwed us over," well, then DC would just take them. Then
right.
so
So I think there was a lot less risk. So I think they get all this credit for saying, "Oh, they went on their own." There really wasn't any risk in there. I can't see anyone turning them down if this failed. So
no, and they had made money. Let's face it, there was royalties and stuff in place during that time for print runs. I think over 300,000, you got a percentage. So
right,
these guys were pulling in $1 million checks already from the sales of, like we've said, X4, Spider-Man, and X-Men. Especially Jim Lee. God knows how much he probably pulled in.
8 million copies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we kind of went over this a little bit. The quick timeline, obviously, they presented, I think, informally to Malibu what they want to do. They went to Marvel, quit there, went to DC, quit there, even though they didn't work there. February 1992 is when they announced it, that they're creating Image, which this is Rob Liefeld's logo. So if anyone didn't know, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that actually. So Rob Liefeld did the logo for that. And they just pretty much went under two rules to start off the company. Image would own absolutely nothing. Image just owned the logo, the rights to the logo, and that was about it. And then all the founders underneath there would create their own companies and be under that. So everyone owned their own thing. That's what made them a little bit different. Yes, it's Image Comics, but you got Top Cow and Todd McFarlane Productions. Everyone had their own production company underneath that. So if
Yeah.
anything were to happen and they would break up, which we find out they do, obviously, there would be less mess involved in that, and they kind of own their own studios, basically. And the
Exactly.
other rule was they could not interfere with anyone else, any of the other partners, all
Right.
except for Wills. Wills did not own his own company. At that time, he was in, I think, the Philippines or Korea. I forgot where he's from. I think Philippines. He was over there, and he didn't want to be involved in starting a company and all that stuff. So he's like, "I'm not going to start. I'll work for one of you guys, basically, for the most part." But he's the only one that did not start a company.
Right. Yeah. And this is a little bit like we talked about last week with Siegel and Schuster, right? They immediately created their own studio that was producing Superman material. So each of these people created their own studio. Extreme Studios was Rob Liefeld. And I guess you're right, Todd McFarlane Productions or something was Todd, Top Cow. What was Jim Lee's? Jim Lee's was Wildstorm.
Jim Lee, yeah.
Wildstorm, I believe. Eric Larson was. I can't remember.
Extreme something.
Extreme was.
No, that's Rob Liefeld.
Rob Liefeld.
Yeah, his was a weird name.
Yeah, I'd have to look at a Savage Dragon book.
Right.
But,
yeah, Wild. Well, we'll talk about this in a second. And actually, Malibu is not his first appearance. if you want to be technical, if you're talking about ads. So we'll talk about that in 1 second. But yeah, as we talked about the print runs for all this stuff, and this was the first time an independent comic, broke the top ranks, and they did more than DC Comics. So, I mean, you remember that you had a shop during that time. That was, I was obviously collecting a lot during that time, and they were like rock stars. When they did the announcement, they had publicity. They were on late night talk shows. They were all over the place. You couldn't go anywhere. If you had a signing somewhere, there was lines around the block. People were chasing them down in hotel rooms and everything. And I even found, if you remember, let me. I don't know if I can share the screen for this. Let me try and share this. Let's see here. Let me try and share a different thing here.
But yeah, I think that's the closest thing you could have called. There you go.
You guys remember the Rob Liefeld doing a Levi commercial directed by Spike Lee?
Yeah.
After I got a job and they saw that you can make a living out of Thursday, you'll hear no complaints anymore. And you created X1? What is the drawing on? This is the Spike Man. And what's this right here? This is the camera on top of your head that will record the wrongdoings of others. So Rob, have you had any formal art training? No. Just got a lot of imagination, I think. Wait till I show a shape and then look down.
I mean, that's just amazing when you think about comic book creators are doing Levi commercials with Spike Lee. Yeah, it still looks the same. He does look. Rob Liefeld still looks the same.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, and you're right. I think we overused that analogy of rock stars in some cases, but that's probably the closest analogy to this is, they had commercials, they had, like you said, when they had signings, people was around the block. It is probably the craziest thing anybody had ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, they got so much publicity. I mean, movie studios were knocking at their door. Rob Liefeld meeting with Tom Cruise and for production stuff. And then, as we know, you get, the Spawn movie. You get Witchblade TV show comes out. Eric Larson's cartoon, Wildcats cartoon comes out. I mean, all these things kept blowing up, and they're all of a sudden, again, these kids in their early 20s are getting knocked on the door by these huge movie companies. They're getting it, just fueling for their ego, basically. Being this young, getting all this money, but it still comes down to you don't know how to run a business. They're having fun doing all this stuff, but the business part still is what kind of eluded a lot of it.
Yeah. So Matthew reminds us Eric Larson had highbrow entertainment. Was that it? I just did not. That's just
really highbrow. Right. Maybe.
That just didn't ring a bell. That's weird.
Yeah. Right. Wild. It's very interesting. What they did back then and kind of putting everything on its ear. It really changed it a little bit. Obviously, with Siegel and Schuster and Jack Kirby, still fighting for rights. And the rumor was, I think it's true, I don't know, but in front of every Marvel comic, it says Stan Lee Presents, and it has the comic afterward. Todd McFarlane tried to get Jack Kirby. So it would be Jack Kirby Presents Image Comics, and Jack Kirby's name, because he wanted to get Jack Kirby more credit than he was getting everywhere else. And he felt he was getting screwed in a lot of things by Marvel. So he wanted to do that and do another kind of, FU to Marvel. Say, look, we got Jack Kirby behind us now. But basically, as we know, they didn't know how to do distribution. They didn't know marketing. They didn't know accounting, logistics. They didn't know all this stuff. So their books started getting later and later and later. So after the first couple of books, it was horrible. They couldn't meet any deadlines they were trying to do. That's part of it why people blame, this comic bust and everything. People were getting frustrated with that. Obviously you had the story during this time. I mean, how did that impact you when all of a sudden you didn't get a book for months on end, and all of a sudden, 1,000 copies show up at your door?
Yeah, it killed me. I mean, literally, it killed my business. Is you had such hype around this company, and so you ordered hundreds of copies of number one, and then you cut back for number two, you cut back for number three, things like that. And back then, I think it's a little bit closer now, but back then you ordered 3 months in advance. And I mean a full 3 months in advance, right? So if I ordered something in January, ordered a comic, it was not going to come out until April. Right. So,
right. And you're laying all that cash out front.
No, you weren't having to do that.
You got terms? Okay.
You did not have to do that. You didn't have to lay it out up front. But the once your order was in, that was it. Like you could do increases, but you couldn't do, and that was even really particular about increases, but definitely you couldn't do decreases, right? Because they had ordered based on this number, so they didn't. The distributor didn't want to be stuck with anything. So when you start having these delays, if I know that a certain thing is coming out at a certain time, I can plan for it. Meaning I can, normally they, back then comic books came out on Thursday or Friday. And on Wednesday, right before they shipped, they would send you an invoice. And so you didn't even know what you were being charged until the Wednesday before. And back then, there was no email and everything was faxed. It is really antiquated compared to today. But, you couldn't even plan for things, right? Because, if you go by what, remember, there's not any computers or anything, right? You're going by your pencil and paper list that you filled out 90 days ago.
Right.
Of when it said this comic was coming out. So I would look at what on this week, all this stuff, I don't know what that echo is. I would look at this week of what was supposed to be coming out, look at my numbers, and then do math in order to estimate what it is that I got to pay. And when you have books that are delayed, then that just throws a whole wrench in things. I'm talking about not a couple of weeks delayed. Like this is months delayed,
right.
6 months delays for some things, right? And then you couldn't decrease your order. So guess what? That person that came in and said, hey, I want 10 copies of Archer and Armstrong number 3, but it's delayed 6 months. That person's nowhere around, dude. And you didn't have debit cards back then. Really, we rarely use credit cards. It was checks and cash. So it's not like I could, like we can today. Oh, I'm going to write down your credit card information and then I can charge you. No, that wasn't a thing back then, dude. That wasn't a thing.
Yep.
And so, that person can just say, oh, never mind. I'm not interested anymore. That came out 6 months late, like it's my fault. Well, it's not my fault, but what can you do? You can't force the person to come buy it.
Right.
So, yeah.
They're not on the hook. You're on the hook. So,
yeah. So that's literally what killed a lot of businesses is, you get hit with these high, unexpected amounts. Plus, you're then stuck with all these comics you can't sell because they were so late. People had lost interest. It was horrific. It was a horror show, man. It was a horror show.
Right. Yeah. So it's a while to your comment down there is, yeah, I mean, that started back with Marvel and DC. printing millions of copies, doing multiple covers of everything. So you're getting millions and millions of copies that's out there, and people that we talked about on another show, obviously the speculation boom, where people were buying 10, 20, 30 copies, and they're thinking they're going to pay their kids college fund with this years from now, and obviously we know it didn't pan out that way. And
yeah, and Spawn. So I'll answer in this way. The mass production, say, of Spawn #1, that didn't hurt me one single bit, man. I couldn't sell enough Spawn #1s. Within a month, that book was selling at $10, $20 a copy. Okay. Now, why does it only sell for about $30 today? And it's because of the mass production, right? And then when you start moving down those numbers, we'll use Archer and Armstrong maybe. When you start moving down those numbers, #2, #3, #4, #5, and then you had mass production. Yes, it killed.
Right. People were only buying #1s. They didn't care about the rest because they weren't really reading it. They just wanted the #1.
That's right. People wanted the '1s. They did not care about Archer and Armstrong #5. But, but the same thing for like Exo Man of War, things like that, okay? Because you never knew what might catch on. Now, right. Spawn was one of those things, and Youngblood was one of those things that, if I ordered 100 copies of #1, I could probably sell 20 copies of #5. That wasn't a big issue.
Yeah, well, we talked to this on one of their shows. I mean, there is a lot of similarities between that, but there's also a lot of differences now. So I don't think it's nearly as bad as it was back then. So I think they've learned a lot of those lessons. And Shelby, we can talk about it, but yeah, this is not the same thing. Obviously, we know everything comes down over time, so eventually this will come down, but it's not going to destroy everything like it did before. So they hired Larry Matter to come in and say, listen, we don't know how to run this. Try and get our books on time. This is only a year and a half after they started, and they realize they're totally screwed on this, and that's their biggest complaint is their books are coming out months late. Let's see, Tim, what do you got here? Tim
What's up, Tim?
Collector demand today for any of the, there's tons. That's before Spawn #1 was still a $5-10 book at most. But now with the whole 90s retro thing right now, the book is back to a $30-40 book. So
yeah,
it definitely has to come back around.
Spawn is. But there was so much stuff here. I'll show some dollar books I just bought this week.
Well, you look at like Max #1 has gotten a resurgence right now. Youngblood #1 has gotten resurgence. These were all dollar books, just a year ago. And they're all coming back around again. So
I have never heard of any of these books, and I just bought them this past week because I thought they were kind of weird and cool. This is from Wildstorm, so Jim Lee's company. Something was it? Wild Core #1. Everything was wild with Jim Lee. Wildstorm Studios doing Wild Core. I have no idea what this book is.
Yeah, you're right. I've never seen that one either.
Never seen it. Here's another Wildstorm. DV8.
Oh, that's a good one.
It looks kind of cool. I'll admit that.
Yeah.
And it has Rainey as an artist, which I really liked. But, of course, you did have a few things. Gen 13.
Yep.
But then, like C23.
I've heard of that.
I heard of it, maybe. Wildstorm kind of broke off on its own a little bit. So you have a revamp of Wildcats. You had a couple of good things that came out later in Image. The Darkness, Garth Ennis, some of his first work. And then, of course, Witchblade.
And that is Michael Turner is kind of the straw that broke the back over an Image there.
I have not been. I was trying to read what Captain Beardo wrote. Not been since that time. I agree with you, man. The spec market is such a. Uh,
All right. So
don't
talking
play it.
about
Don't play the game. Don't play it. I'll just say it like that. Don't play it. Okay, just keep an eye out on trends, and then you can usually catch something before it gets too blown out. Okay, but don't waste your money on specking. Just pay attention to trends, and you may not pay cover price for something, but if you see something trending upward, you can pick it up at a good price before it explodes. So
or just collect what you like.
or just collect what you like. That's even a better suggestion, right?
Okay, so going back to this, obviously we're getting close on time here.
We're getting close on time.
Yeah. So as we mentioned in the beginning, what happened? You get Rob is kicked out of Image because of Michael Turner, essentially. So we remember going back to those two things. There's two laws that Image had in place: is Image is not going to own anything, and you cannot disrupt anyone else's business. And so part of that agreement was you cannot basically poach other people's talents from their studios. So Michael Turner basically went to Rob Liefeld, or Rob Liefeld went to Michael Turner. We don't know exactly, but basically Michael Turner said, "Hey, I want to do a book. Can I do it under your label?" For some reason he couldn't get it done over in Jim Lee's. I think it was Jim Lee's. He was at Jim Lee's.
Yeah. It's Jim Lee.
So Rob Liefeld was like, "Sure, yeah, come on over. You can do a book," and that sent obviously Jim Lee and everyone, in a hissy fit, because obviously there was growing tension between everyone, because these are, again, young guys, a little bit of an ego, highly competitive, so they're button heads, a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different personalities there, so they get into it a little bit, and the only way to be able to kick someone out is you needed a unanimous vote. So all the founders had to get together, have a unanimous vote to kick Rob out. So the way supposedly it went down is that Rob, everyone got together. They had the first vote, and the first vote was unanimous. Rob gets kicked out. And then part of the agreement is after 30 days, they had to have another vote to make sure everyone cooled off. Did they still want him kicked out? In between that 30-day period is when Rob left the company.
Yeah.
So he quit when he says he quits, but everyone says he was fired. But again, back to the thing, there really was no harm, no foul, basically, because he ends up going back over to Marvel with Jim Lee. So they go back over to Marvel, do the Heroes Reborn stuff over there. He takes over Captain America. Jim Lee goes over to Fantastic Four. Jim Lee sells Wildstorm to DC. So it looks like this could potentially be the end of Image. They lost one of their founders. Wildstorm was sold to DC. Rob and Jim have now left. They're working for Marvel again, which of course pisses Todd McFarlane and everyone else off to no end that they did this. Their stuff is still all over the place. So it looks like it's coming down to the end here. Oops, I forgot to change the title there. But really,
let's say Super Patriots in Star Wars.
Super Patriots, and it's Valentine's Day. It's not Jim Valentino, so we got that going on too.
Someone was doing their slides last minute.
Yeah, someone is throwing this together. I was busy. I was busy, man. But Valentino does not get enough credit for revamping Image. Image was this hardcore superhero, giant muscle, a lot of extra, pouches. You need pouches, you need big guns, and you need muscles and no feet. That's what Image was all about for the most part. They were superhero, male-dominated kind of characters. And Jim Valentino came aboard when he took over and pretty much said, you know what? He had a lot of connections in the indie world. He's like, you know what? We need to branch out and do more besides these superhero comics. We need to do a lot more and turn things around. So he brought in an unknown person named Brian Michael Bendis to do Powers. He brought in Robert Kirkman, again, an unknown kid at the time. So he brought in all these indie people and say, let's pivot a little bit and let's really focus more on other stories that Marvel and DC will not produce, because basically all the stuff that they're currently producing could easily be done by Marvel or DC. And that really changed a lot of the trajectory. And that gave a second life to Image, because now they have the ability to look at this and go, okay, yeah, Todd, Rob, Jim, it worked for you guys. That was 10 years ago. It was the boom. Everything went well. You were selling a million stuff. It worked well. You started a comic thing and it worked. We can't do that now. We need to stick with Marvel and DC. You guys are tanking. We need to do something. But now you bring in Robert Kirkman. So Robert Kirkman now does Invincible. He then comes out with his little book called The Walking Dead, and it becomes huge and it absolutely blows up. And it wasn't a superhero story, in the Walking Dead side of it at least. So now people are looking at that going, okay, now the independent people and creators are looking at this going, okay, we can do this. Look what Kirkman did, and then they made Kirkman a partner out of everything, out of all this too. But Valentino and Eric Larson butted heads a lot. And Larson didn't necessarily like the direction they were going in with all these independents. So Larson had a lot more connections with Marvel and DC, and he basically got the votes to kick Valentino out. So Eric Larson takes on, publishing rights for a little while before he brings in Eric Stevenson. And then Eric Stevenson is the one that actually made Kirkman a partner. They expanded more into the indie side again, bringing, Saga. They've had a lot of women, drawn and owned comics now coming in. Past Point was there in the day.
What up, Past Point?
Rockstar. See, he said the same as a rock star. It was, again, we use that term a lot, but these guys were rock stars. So they really turned it around with putting Valentino in there and then bringing Eric Stevenson in there. So they turned it all around. Obviously we kind of know the modern history of what's gone on with Image now. Now Image is the place to go if you want to creative control, you want to be with a big company, but you don't want to be Marvel and DC, and there isn't so much this animosity of you can only work here and not there. Again, one of the rumors, if it's true or not, I don't know, was Todd McFarlane actually fired Brian Michael Bendis. So Brian Michael Bendis was writing Sam and Twitch for Todd, and Todd somehow got wind or something that Marvel was courting Brian to come write either a Spider-Man Ultimates or to do something on his own over there, and Todd didn't like that, I guess, even him entertaining that idea. So he essentially fired Brian for talking with the audacity to go to a Spider-Man book after Todd had left Spider-Man. So that's basically how Brian left Image. He was fired, and he started a little book called Alias, which he creates Jessica Jones for. So he creates Jessica Jones. He does go on to write Spider-Man, and obviously he writes or has written pretty much every Marvel book there has been. So he becomes a huge thing because Todd didn't like that. He still has this very kind of FU attitude towards Marvel, and anything he can do to do something to them and hurt them in some way, he seems to be all for. That does not seem to go away. Past Point is in the building. Stuntman, don't kick him out, man. We need him here. So going to what we were talking about earlier, Wild. If you look at this, when you talk about some of the rare comics, and I didn't do my fun thing here. Hold on. I got to do my fun thing, man. Hold on a second.
I do it.
I can feel you, Jerry. Show me the money. Jerry, you better yell. Show me the money.
All right. So Malibu Sun gets all the credit all the time for being Spawn's first appearance as an advertisement. But actually, it was Rust #1, which came out a month before Malibu Sun. And Spawn was on the back inside cover, I believe. So with the back inside cover, Spawn #1 coming. That preceded Malibu Sun. Obviously, Malibu Sun has the cool cover appearance. So as we know, cover appearances are what drives a lot of desirability. But it's actually Rust #1. If you can find that one, that's the one you want to get for his actually first appearance in an advertisement. And then if you really want to find some harder to find ones, the Spawn #1, the black and white edition. So that one came out for retail incentive for issue 65 for Spawn, and we know basically once you got past issue 35 or 45 was the print run starts dropping, and then once you get in like the 90s, it's you're getting like 50, 60,000 or something like that. So he was trying to spike sales in the mid 60s for the Spawns. So he did the 1 in 50 black and white incentive. So there's roughly 2,000 to 3,000 printed by the looks of it. Again, it's hard to find an exact number on those. But again, only a couple thousand of those. So if you can find a black and white Spawn #1, that'd be the way to go. And then, of course, we know The Walking Dead #1. That's going for over $1,000 right now. Chew #1 goes for several $100s. I think it's got $700, $800 right now for Chew #1. So those are a little bit more rare ones. As we talked about, the print runs are so large in all these. There isn't a whole lot of really rare early Image comics.
Right.
You're really just tracking down those kind of advertisements and those kind of one-offs that you're looking for. And it's really when that Spawn numbers started dipping, when you get from like the 100s to 200s, when you get those really low print runs, that's what everyone's trying to find right now. So if you're out in the wild and you see Spawn 100 to 200, even up to 250, really, make sure you grab those, because those are the ones people are trying to find right now.
Yeah, that gold Wildcats is cool. Pass point.
Yep.
Thank you, Matthew, for dropping our YouTube links. Drop everybody's link. He looks like he's dropping Pass Point's link and stuff. Yeah, please go sub us up. Making that run to 300, and pretty soon I'm going to be doing my 100th mail call.
100th mail call.
Doing my 100th.
Was that yours?
I think it accidentally was.
You got some echo going there.
Sorry,
Sure,
I was subbing up. I was subbing up Pass Point.
You have not subbed up Pass Point. How dare you? That's
I have
okay.
not.
You did announce me for
I have not. Man, everybody's got a freaking chance today. But yeah, I think I'm at 258 subs up. So please, if you haven't subbed me up, sub me up. Sub up, of course, Jeff, right here on this channel. I think I'm at 97 mail calls. I have 122 videos on my channel, if you can believe that. 122
Dang.
videos. But
I'm proud of being some of those videos, man. You've been doing a great job.
And but I'm doing pretty soon. We're going to do my 100th mail call. I'm probably going to do it live. I'll be doing some giveaways, some slabs, and stuff like that. So hopefully I can get. I'm hoping to get around 300 subs about the time I get close to my 100th mail call.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, and we'll do a big show. I was going to invite Jeff and a few other people on and do something live. So
We just can't have Matthew and Pass Point in the same chat. That's all. Other than that, we're good.
But definitely, hey, like I always say, people that visit us are the best parts of the community. So definitely sub everyone up, help everyone out.
Thank you, Pass Point.
Yeah, anyone else have a channel we can drop? Jeff will be on Whatnot right after this show. I guess I should sub. Yeah, of course you should, Matthew. Thank you. I'm on Tuesday nights on Whatnot. So Tuesday, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time is my usual time. I always claim I try to do Tuesday, Thursday, but for some reason, Thursdays has not worked out the past 3 weeks in a row.
So really, you do Tuesdays.
But I am there on Tuesdays. We try to support, of course, Thunder God on Thursdays, and then on Saturdays, Gorilla Todd. So,
yeah, very cool.
Visit us on all those places. But yeah, that's a great presentation there, Jeff.
Yeah, I just want to throw something quick together, just talking about the past a little bit of Image Comics here. Obviously, 90 stuff is big again, so might as well talk about Image Comics as it doesn't get much bigger than that.
Subbed me up days ago. I appreciate it, Matthew. Yeah, and I'll be honest, is that I do still have a bit of a bad taste in my mouth every time I see that eye. because I loved my little store, and and it was a struggle, but it was cheap rent, and it was always kind of one of my dreams to do something like that, and I, it's never good to say nothing's totally your fault, and blame other people for your problems and stuff.
Right.
Maybe it would have happened anyway. It's just, it's
I mean,
still
at the time you're in that bust where 9 out of 10 shops were closing. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, the estimates went, I think, from like 30,000 stores down to 3,000 in like a year time period. So, and I think there's a lot of good independent companies out there that are doing some really good things. Boom Studios is somebody I've really admired for several years now, with a lot of the stuff they're doing.
they're a great marketing company. They're a great marketing company. You got to give them credit. Ross does an amazing job marketing and putting those books out there. Aftershock is putting out some great stuff. Like I said, there's a lot of good books that are coming out right now.
Yeah, and there's there's a lot of good companies out there that are doing some really good things. I'll agree. I still worry a bit about seeing some of the explosion of some of these things. It's something is killing the children is a great example.
Well, we haven't even reached the peak of that yet. That's still going to keep going. I don't think
we've reached the peak of it. That's the crazy part of that one. I think like Ice Cream Man has reached its peak. It's dipping down now. You had a lot of initial surge around things like Berserker, Geiger, but I'm easily able to pick up a lot of those books at cover price still. You've got a lot of incentive covers that are out there, which I'm not sure how much that drives the market a lot.
Right. Like I said, you got all these covers, and there's some people that just collect these covers. Mm-hmm. I got friends that just collect Department of Truth covers and some children covers, because there's so many. We talk about incentives, store exclusives. There's just so many of them that are out there. They're buying all these here, and obviously Something Killing Children we know is picked up. It's going to be Netflix. That's why that one hasn't reached its peak. We know Ice Cream Man, has been options, I believe. I don't know in what capacity, but like you said, these are getting dipped down. Berserker is taking a little bit of a dip down now. Like you said, it goes that 3rd and 4th issue. Everyone sees how number 1 does, and then they do half that for number 2, and then 3, and then now they can see the sales of number 1 and 2. So now 4 gets bumped up a little bit, and then let's see if it goes back down. So who knows where that's going to end up, but we know that's got a movie and a cartoon coming out for that one. So that one will eventually go back up too. So that's the thing right now. All this, it's going up and down, and I hate to say speculation part of it, but it is when you're talking about, these number ones, everyone's grabbing number 1 still. And then everyone's hoping everything gets optioned and picked up because you got Netflix and Amazon and so many more distribution points, these media companies that are jumping on these cartoons and these comics because of the success of what the MCU has done, and they're looking for other options right now.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm still confused behind some things, right? So, for example, there's that new one coming out, Eat the Rich. I don't know anything about it. I don't know any of the creators right off, and I maybe just haven't looked hard enough.
Right, I don't either.
But all of a sudden I see solicitations for 5-6 different freaking covers of something that hadn't even come out yet. Yep. And I know nothing about it, and it's just, it's confusing to me. You know, the DC label, that Hill label and stuff, they've been putting out really good material. Why all of a sudden did this nice house on the lake suddenly kind of explode, you know? And I don't feel like it was due to necessarily the greatness of the story, right? I mean, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's something else. I'm not sure, but
I mean, for that one, I mean, it's a great story, I think so far, and it was a slow burn, even though it's only on issue 2 right now, because it came out and the stores didn't order a whole lot of it. You know, it was definitely under ordered on that, but everyone saw the success of Something's Killing Children, Department of Truth, both get options. So everyone's looking at what Tynan is doing, like, wow, that's amazing. And oh, by the way, he's doing this DC Black Label, project. Yeah, right, Matthew. It's the writer. So everyone is now following the writers, maybe as much as they follow the artist, but they're following the writers. And I've noticed his older books, like Woods and Wind, those have shot up a lot right now too. So people are really looking towards the writing side of it, especially someone like that who, again, the speculation of his other books have been picked up. Yes, they're great books too, but I think it's more of a speculation almost a little bit on that.
Well, and you're seeing that undulation, right? I think in the late 80s, early 90s, it was a bit more writer driven, like Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, things like that, because no offense to Dave Gibbons, let's face it, the art in Watchmen to me is not that great.
Right.
But, the story and, the art carried it along as well as it could. Are distracting. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, Boom Studios said that, Captain Beardo. That's why they have now limited the amount of incentive covers and retail exclusives, because it was pulling away from their cover A's, their main bread and butter.
That's right.
People were chasing, these $20, $30, $40, retail exclusives.
Yeah, Boom actually just did a contract, I think, with only one company to do incentive covers now.
Yep.
From what I understood from some people I talked to at the con a couple of weeks ago. Then you had a very artist-driven market that I think people kind of realized after a while, right, is a lot of flash, a lot of, bombasticness, but no.
How about the pouches?
No writing, Now you kind of seen it cycle back where the writers are important. But, I got to admit, there's a lot of good artists and stuff, I mean, I always tell the story about when I met Chris Claremont, and he had just put out a Star Trek book, and I really liked the artist. I think it was Arthur Adams. But, he's like, oh, did you read that? Did you see my new book? And I was like, well, it came in just as I was leaving town. I looked at it. I really liked the art. And then Chris Claremont, in a very pissed off voice, goes, well, I didn't draw the damn thing. Okay. Pissed off, would not talk to me again. We ended up sitting next to each other at lunch, and he would not even look in my direction. Okay.
Oh, understandable a little bit.
Right. But
all
I
right.
mean, anyway,
I got to get going though.
All right, everyone. Hey, thank you all for visiting us tonight. We'll be on my channel next week. I have no idea what the topic is. If y'all got any ideas, please leave a comment below. Hit everybody up on IG, on YouTube. Jeff, where else are you going to be this week?
This week is a little bit of not doing as many shows because I'm actually heading to Chicago. So I'm taking a little vacation, heading back up to Chicago. So I won't be on Thunder this Thursday, and I won't have my normal Whatnot Friday slab giveaway and mystery boxes, and I won't have the Sunday one either. So I'm taking a few days off there. So tonight is going to be my last show for a week there, and then I'll be back to my normal schedule, which is on Friday, Sunday, Monday on Whatnot, and Thursday on the Thunderdome. So that's where I'm at. Shelby, we know where you're going to be out this week.
I've already made my announcements and
Yep.
stuff, so I'm going to send you my list of things I want from comic shops up there in Chicago. So
You got it, man. All right, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in again. Thanks for sticking with us for an hour right now. Make sure you sub Shelby up. It's going to be on his show next week. And as always, Shelby, take us out of here.
all right, everyone. I love you all. Thank y'all for tuning in and joining us this evening. But most of all, peace, love, and comics. Bye.